Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Shine Wellthy. I am Chris Williams, and I'm super excited to have my dear friend, Amanda Hinman of Hinman Holistic Health here. She is going to be sharing with us all about hormonal health and wellness. And Amanda, thank you so much for being here. I know you work with many women that are, dealing with that are entrepreneurs and have businesses that are also wanting to make sure that their health and wellness is on track so that we can show up and be the best version of ourselves and be all dialed in on that. So welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Super excited to be here with you. And yes, as Chris mentioned, my name is Amanda Hinman. I'm the founder of Hinman Holistic Health and the creator of the Natural Thyroid and Hormone Solution Program, where we specialize in helping women to massively increase their energy, mental clarity, and optimize weight so that all the health stuff is firing on all cylinders and you can show up in every area of your life in the most fullest, vibrant version.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And, we so need it because I think a lot of times, we forget that this is a critical component to us being successful in our business, but also in our life. Because when we're not feeling good, we can't show up for our clients, for our business, even for our loved ones or for ourselves. And so, this is just a conversation that I think that I'm grateful to be able to have with you and to share you with, my audience here so that, if they're not feeling well, if there are some things out of whack that there's a solution for it. There's a solution for it. And I love, and I want you to talk about the analogy of the river. I know I love you shared this analogy with me. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. So will you kind of share, that analogy of, and why it's important for us to take care of our health and wellness?
Sure, absolutely. It's a useful analogy because I think it kind of sticks. And obviously, like you said, I remember it. And it's really what I like to explain about a different approach to health in general, like the conversation of health. I mean, obviously, Chris, you're working with a lot of amazing entrepreneurs who are in the arena of health. We are all about helping to inspire others to reach their peak performance, to feel their best and to feel amazing. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can access that and really lead people and help guide people towards health. But at the end of the day, I think one of the most compelling things is to do a gut check and to be really honest with ourselves. And I'm going to put myself in this category. Like I continuously have to do the work, right? Because it's not a one and done, but to ask the question of, where am I? How am I feeling? Not only in this moment today, physically, but also about the trajectory of my health over the next 2, 5, 10, 25 years, right? And sometimes it seems like, I don't know, almost hard to predict, but it's an interesting concept to say, like, do I feel confident that I have the knowledge of what types of nutrients, what types of self-care practices, what types of, habits and routines and actions I get to take that are going to allow me to have adequate nutrient absorption and digestion and optimal function for the long term? Or does that feel like a little bit of a crapshoot? Because candidly, in our world today, as many advances as there are in modern medicine and Western medicine, it is still more of a reactive type of a model, right? And this is where I go to the river example. Imagine if you had a job and your job was to go to the river every single day and help all of the broken boats and bodies that you see that are in the river all the time. Every single day you show up for work and you're eager, you're ready to do some important life-changing impact. And you see all of these people flailing around in the water with like broken bones and their boats are capsized and they have holes and cracks in them. And you're like, holy cow, there's an urgent need here. So you and your coworkers start to pull people out of the water, you resuscitate them. Maybe you patch up some of the boats and put some new, siding on and get this all repaired. And you feel pretty good because like, okay, we massively helped them. But if day after day, month after month, year after year, you're going by the river and the same circumstance keeps happening, it begs the question, what else? Like, why is this happening? Is water just terrible? Like no one should ever be allowed to get into the water? Like, why are all these broken boats and bodies all around?
Stay away from the rivers.
Just stay away from the water, right? And then we start to walk up the river and say, like, what else may be at play? What else is happening here? And little did you know, 1,000 yards upstream, there is this precipitous plunge from a waterfall. And it's like, oh man, well, duh. No wonder we see all of these broken boats and bodies, because they're going over the cliff here and clearly not prepared. They either don't have the skills, don't have the appropriate equipment and the tools. And then as you go upstream and you're watching, you're like, actually, but wait, there's some other people that seem to be going off this waterfall, and they actually almost look like they're having fun. They've got different equipment. They've got life jackets on, they've got oars, they've got helmets. They look like they've been training for this, and they're doing this for enjoyment. Interesting. Those are not any of the people that we see when we're pulling out broken boats and bodies in the river, right? Yep. And then you go upstream from that and you see, oh, there's some signage and it says going to the right, there's this waterfall or whatever. So it asks the question of, what are we doing in our approach to health? Are we responding at the point of downstream in the river, people flailing around, there's broken boats and bodies, we have all of these alarm bells going off and all these unwanted symptoms? Or are we in the space where we're looking upstream far enough to say, hey, check out the sign. Do we have appropriate training? Do we have appropriate skills? Do we have the appropriate equipment to make this journey downstream actually be enjoyable?
Yeah.
Or are we setting ourselves up for a crash?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because then if you are setting yourselves up properly, then you don't have to deal with the reaction of the broken bones and your broken body down the road, because you've already been proactive with it. So yeah, we get to be, whether we choose to be proactive or reactive, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And there's a spectrum. So I love to, a lot of our work, I'll talk about, what do you identify with? And there's no judgment, right? I've been in all of these seasons and different stages in my life, but it's a great clarifying exercise to bring awareness to, where am I today? I look at 4 different categories in terms of how we are currently showing up and approaching our health journey. The first is what I call like the empowered health leader. This is somebody who has very minimal symptoms, maybe on occasion, a handful, 3, 4 symptoms that cropped up. But for the most part, you feel fantastic in your body. You're very dialed in and clear of how your body's physiology is, what your, functional optimal lab work looks like, the nutrients that your body needs, the self-care and the amount of sleep, the amount of exercise, the amount of downtime. You also feel confident in that long-term trajectory because you are on top of these other factors and knowing kind of, hey, I'm in an optimal level, not just a non-diagnosable range. We can talk about that next.
Yeah.
Because those are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things in our relationship as women is our relationship with food. We feel confident, we feel satisfied, we feel in love with our body and the way that we look, and also our relationship with time. We feel we have adequate time to take care of our own needs. Yeah. We feel that we are worthy of investing in ourselves and taking the time needed to take care of ourselves, right? So that's what I would call the empowered health leader. The next category is what I would say like an emerging health leader. They're getting there. They know, like I've felt good, and I've had seasons where I felt really on top of it. I've been dialed in with my nutrition. I've been dialed in with the activity that resonates with my body. I am aware when I pay attention, my symptoms are really, really strong. They're minimal, if any, and I know what I need to do. Sometimes I do it. Sometimes I kind of fall off the wagon, but I can get right back on. And they're also eager to say like, okay, what does that next level of optimal vitality look like for me? And they're always kind of on that journey of growth, right? Yeah. The next, I actually think is the most important distinction here is what I call a active health seeker. So this is somebody who oftentimes has more unwanted symptoms. They're actually, if I were to compare people, they're in a worse place physiologically. They feel shitty. They are like, enough, like I'm drawing a line in the sand. I don't want to feel like this anymore. Yeah. And I need to take a new course of action. I need to understand what my body needs to feel better or why this is happening. And I recognize that I need to have some support to move the needle. Yeah. So they're actually in a better place because they're uncomfortable enough that they're empowered to do something different, right?
Yeah.
And then that fourth category is what I think of as a passive health reactor. And unfortunately, Chris, this is what I would say the bulk of the population falls
Yeah.
into,
Yeah.
because we're fine. I go to the doctor, I may not feel fantastic, but I go to the doctor and he's like, oh yeah, everything looks good. Maybe, watch the sodium or cut back on, add a little bit more walking in and come back and see me in a year. You don't feel fantastic.
Yeah.
You have a number of unwanted symptoms, bloating, headaches periodically, maybe some dry skin, hot flashes, that, but you kind of just almost have resigned to the fact of like, this is just how things are for women my age.
Yeah.
Not much I can do about it. And it's almost
Yeah.
like it feels more overwhelming to start to make a change than to just keep doing status quo.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I know that, when you're in that place too, like, and I'm going to let you share, about the tests and things that you do, which makes your program and the way that you serve women so much different, is that, a lot of times, the doctor's like, yep, everything's normal. Well, but you still feel like crap.
Yeah.
So how can it be normal if you still feel like crap? Right.
Well, and that, I love that you said it, because that is unfortunately what so many of us hear. And that is totally disempowering, because then it almost like reinforces the message of like, well, I guess there's nothing I can do. He says everything is fine, and this must be what is supposed to happen.
Yep.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it almost feels like you have to, not necessarily fight with your doctor, but be a stronger advocate for no, like this, there is something else happening here.
Well, and I think it comes down to empowerment. I think of it as personal empowerment, right? And that's a combination of things. It's knowledge, it's skill, and it's understanding, right? It's knowledge, awareness, and skill. It's like you said, in our practice, we look at some additional pieces of information that can be guided tools to know, like, for example, if we do a Dutch hormone complete, we can see how hormones are currently being utilized in the body, metabolized and or not in the body. We can see how your body has certain levels of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and cortisol. And if it's able to metabolize it, are your cells actually getting the benefit of these hormones or not? Right? Because sometimes what we can measure in the blood can be a very different picture than what is actually having an effect at the cellular level. And that's what's being metabolized. That's what's being utilized.
So how do you tell if something's being metabolized or not?
Well, so that's what, for example, using the Dutch hormone test is one of the things that I like to look at often, because it's measured in urine. So urine is the byproduct of what's gone through and been utilized in our cells and what is now being excreted. That's the metabolites, right? So instead of measuring the blood, it's almost like, think of the blood as like the it's what's the potential, what's circulating in the body, which is helpful. We need to know, like, what is the potential?
Yeah.
But again, sometimes because of our cell health, the health of the cells themselves, either the receptors are blocked, we can have insulin resistance, we can have thyroid resistance, we can have other types of cortisol resistance. I mean, these are phrases that we don't hear that much, but essentially what it's saying is like your cell receptor, if I think of like, this is a cell, the pocket of the cell, even if cortisol is floating around in my blood supply, it may not actually be able to get inside the receptor, which means it doesn't go inside the cell. So you're not getting the benefit of it having an effect.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Gosh, yes. And so, I know when I go for my, yearly, and they're, do blood work, and it's like, oh, you're in hormonal range, or you're in menopause or whatever, but that's like normal. If they're only looking at the blood, they're not looking at the other component of it. I love that.
Well, and this is a dynamic that I see, and actually my body is predisposed to this, so I have to keep an eye on it, but I see it very common with many women, is they'll be aware of maybe suboptimal thyroid function. Sometimes they're not even diagnosed or aware of suboptimal, because their TSH or even their free T3 can look okay.
Yeah.
Now, we need to have adequate conversion in the liver to be able to convert T4 to T3, first of all, but then we need to have adequate levels of cortisol to be a primer for hormone action, for thyroid hormone action to take place. So for example, if somebody has decent blood levels of thyroid hormone, but either they have way high levels of estrogen that aren't being removed properly, and we can see this on a Dutch test as well. The estrogen can block the thyroid from going into the cell, or they have suppressed levels of cortisol that can inhibit the cell receptor from receiving and accepting that thyroid hormone. So you could still have somebody who feels down, who's gaining weight, who just doesn't feel, losing hair. And the doctor can say, well, your thyroid looks fine. Well, that's only one part of the puzzle. It's not the whole picture.
This is fascinating. And this is why, working with you and your team, like, can you share some of the extra, like you really do the detective work, right? With women.
And it's a combination. And I will say, admittedly, Chris, it's funny because I'm really people, and I can geek out on like the lab and the testing stuff we look at, micronutrient levels, what actually, and again, this is another thing, not only from a hormone level, but from the nutrients. Even if we're eating real whole foods and we feel great about it, awesome. Let's check the micronutrient levels. What is actually getting inside the red blood cells of your cells? Because just like hormones can look very different, sometimes I have people who are like, I'm taking supplements. I'm like, awesome. Is it getting into your cell? Because if we're in a chronic sympathetic dominant state, it's hard for absorption to take place. So we'll test micronutrient levels. We'll test the Dutch hormone metabolized levels, right? Well, oftentimes we'll look at a gut, a stool test to see how the gut microbiome is performing and how the adequacy of even the mucosal layer of our gut, the villi, are they able to absorb or do they need repair?
Wow.
So these are all pieces that we can see and then give, targeted, customized recommendations of support. The other side, that flip side, that is equally as important as the physiology is the mental, emotional behavior. We do so much work in terms of like world-class psychological tools and support, even to work on the subconscious with hypnosis, with EFT, because if we don't, you know what the number one toxin in our world is?
Stress.
Our thoughts,
Our
our
thoughts.
own inner critic.
The
The number one toxin.
Yeah.
So if we don't start to bring awareness to that, you can't change what you're not acknowledging. So part of the work that we do is really, it's comprehensive because it has to be. You cannot just go to, and I love so many colleagues that are out there in the world of functional medicine and naturopaths and all of that. They're fantastic. And if you look at it unilaterally from a nutrient, even a gut and hormone perspective, but you're not addressing the mental, emotional, the behavioral, the subconscious, you're only going to get so far.
Yeah, that's so true. And that I love that it's a holistic approach, that you really do blend all of it. So not only do people, when they work with you and your team, they get to have all of the testing done, and you've got somebody who is certified as a functional nutrition, practitioner. Am I saying that right?
Functional medicine practitioner. Where technically it's a certified functional medicine practitioner.
Yeah. And you are that. And then the people that you bring on your team are also the same. So you're getting experts to understand the lab work, but then you're also getting this extra support weekly in the classes that you teach too, right?
Everything we do, it's a comprehensive. It's like, okay, let's look at the physical side. Let's look at the what I call mindset shifts. Look at the shifts that get to take place, new ways of perceiving, new perspectives and new awarenesses to bring to the surface, so that
I love this so much. And this is, my brain as a soulful business coach and strategist is like the difference between strategy and mindset, and we need both, right? It needs to be a holistic approach as well, because you can have all the strategy and know all the steps to take, but if you're not tapped into the mindset that allows you to actually take inspired action, then nothing is going to change. So that, emotional and mindset component of it, with the way that you're able to step into this new wave being as an empowered, leader of your own health and wellness, is definitely going to, make a huge difference as to whether or not anything in your health and wellness changes.
And that is my intention is always to help share knowledge and empowerment that lasts. And a lot of it lasts when it changes the identity, right? When it changes you, because it changes your thought pattern, which then will create a new result. And once you've lived a new result, it's known. You can't unknow it. Right. And that's how you change your identity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Same. So much in transformational coaching is based on that too, which you're speaking my language now.
Yes.
New identity, right? Because it's who are we being first, right? And when we have a new identity, then it becomes easy to create the new habits. And that just becomes more of naturally who you are and what it is that you do, because that mental shift and that mindset and identity state of being has changed. So I love that you're working with women on that too, so that they get the full impact of the work that you're doing with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So good. So what else is inside of, your program, or what else would you like to share with our audience and women who are maybe struggling with either thyroid imbalance or hormone imbalance? And the other thing, by the way, that I just want to jump in here is, even though, you and your team focus on natural solutions, like you have never been the one to say, oh no, like you can never take
I'm glad you said that.
So I really want to kind of preface that by, if people aren't sure whether or not, well, I've been put on Synthroid, or I've been, or I need to be on, like, can you speak to that piece too? So
yes, wholeheartedly. And actually it's funny, I'm living it right now, because I feel very, and I have not always been this way. In fact, my history was being somebody who was inclined to be holistic and natural in just the approach to health and wellness. And then my family experienced pretty significant, like, you got to wake up health transformation. When I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. And then this was, back, a decade ago. And then my oldest daughter was experiencing debilitating seizures. I mean, anywhere from 10 to 15 seizures in a single day. And it was devastating, Chris. I mean, I remember like being on my knees crying. I'm like, God, just help us figure out a solution for her. Right. And the amazing pediatric neurologists, they are so intentional and they're so well educated and best of intentions, but they were simply giving us management practices. Like, here's the medication that can manage her symptoms so she won't have breakthrough seizures. She was on 4 benzodiazepines as an 8-year-old, just to make it 24 hours. I mean, when you talk about my super sharp, witty little girl turned into almost like just no emotion, because it had to suppress so much. It was so devastating. But the reason I say that is because for a period of time, I felt this internal struggle, and I would feel sick to my stomach giving her this medication every day. And even myself, when I was taking medication. And it wasn't until I, again, talk about change in identity. It was an evolution of educating and becoming informed and recognizing, like, where I am today or where she is today does not have to be our truth for the future, because the human body is recreated constantly. We have an entirely new, every single atom in your body is entirely new 7 years later. Our taste buds change over in 10 days. The cells of the epithelial lining of your gut change every 5 days.
What?
Your liver, you have a whole new liver every 300 days. So like, literally, your body is being recreated constantly. And so the only way it's recreated in a similar fashion is if the environment that it's created in remains static. It will be recreated into more of the same. But if you change that, so that was empowering to be like, oh, wow. So we can start to create a shift that will affect our future. Then I no longer saw, quote unquote, medication or conventional medicine, Western medicine practices as the enemy or something to be fearful of or permanent. It was more of like, okay, let's use this like a cast. If I break my ankle, of course I want some stability. Of course I want some support until the rest of the body can strengthen and heal. Then when it's no longer needed, it's no longer needed. So that was a huge shift. And that's how I approach everything. I don't believe there is a cookie cutter. In fact, I'm sitting here with my ACL. I just had ACL surgery almost 2 weeks ago because of a skiing injury. And it was a shift for me to say, like, okay, what's the best approach? Well, I know that I have a desire to play tennis and be skiing and be very active. So having the surgery to replace my ACL, and then combining that with good nutrition, adequate, restoration, microcirculation, all of the things that I can do is going to be a winning combination. Like take the best of both.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's my approach when women are on medication that they've been on for years, or when, I've even had women say, well, how do you feel about bioidentical hormones and this and that? And I say, they're fantastic for some people. I don't have a preference or a strong, thought one way or another about this is good or this is bad. It's more of like, let's look at your body specifically. Let's make sure your detoxification pathways are working optimally. Let's make sure you have all the things in line so that if you choose to use this tool, it's going to be effective and the most beneficial in your body.
So good. So good. Oh my gosh, I love this so much, Amanda, because it really takes I love how you really, you just said, this isn't a cookie cutter approach. Like you really do look at the individual, and it's also a holistic approach so that you can make sure that, the things that need to be working are working, so that you're not covering up, the symptoms, and you're actually treating what's upstream.
Yes.
Right. So that people can really, feel well. And the other thing that I really love is that people have access. Like we're not just, here you go, watch some videos, here you go, read a book. Like, can you share a little bit about, the amazing support that people get to, going on this journey? Because it is confusing.
Totally confusing. Yeah. And that's why our approach is one that's going to have multi-layers of support, right, built in. So there is, all of our clients, all of our members have access to an online member portal. Well, they can access, it's helpful to have some educational training and some videos to go back and be like, okay, so this makes sense. And I need to look for these types of things. I can go in my blood work. So when I go next year, I can go back and say like, okay, what ranges are optimal versus just reference ranges. And you can kind of cross-check and have those as resources to always come back to. So there definitely is that like online training component to it. There is also individual sessions with myself or my team as your personal health consultant, right? And it's about reviewing your specific lab work. It's about your specific lifestyle needs. My client Beth, who is on the road and travels 3 weeks out of every month, is going to have different circumstances. Like when we're talking about, her nutrition, when she's eating out on the road, she's gonna have different situation than my client Susie, who is home and is primarily like working from home, providing for her 3 kids. There's just different factors that need to be explored to figure out a game plan that's going to work best for each person, right? So it does have those private consults as well. And we have what I call inspiration and amplification sessions bi-monthly, where we come together in a small community, and so powerful to have that loving accountability, because that's what keeps us tuned in and top of mind, but shared best practices. I cannot tell you, like Amanda was sharing with Suzanne the other week, she was like, oh my gosh, so we've been making some of these detoxification like changes in our home environment in terms of cleaning up. And she's like, I found this brand is really helpful. And Suzanne's like, oh my gosh, I need that toothpaste, like you said. So sharing best practices makes you understand that you're not on this journey alone. And it's like a time-saving like benefit, because you hear from others what's working, what's not, and how they're navigating the journey. So it's multi-access point. And then you have, after each of your individual sessions, we do a specific session write-up with the key points that we discussed and celebrated, and also your takeaway action steps, and customize if they have any recommendations, for example, for supplements that may be beneficial. You have your own private place to order those at a discounted rate. You can get them at wholesale plus a discount. So, there's always access to all of your write-ups, all of your customized recommendations, access to the online membership learning, the group support, and your individual sessions.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. It really is everything that you need. Like everything. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, and it's just like the nuance, like you talk about. One other thing dropped in for this client, Beth, she had been on statin medications for a number of years, and it's good. Her doctor was like, hey, with elevated cholesterol, this is the protocol, this is what we're going to do. So we talked about and educated her how cholesterol, especially elevated cholesterol often goes hand in hand with suboptimal thyroid function. And she
Oh
had
my gosh, I
never,
have both.
yeah, a lot of women never, that
Yeah.
connection has never been articulated and
Yep.
explained, right?
Mhm.
And so it was a conversation of like, okay, what do you want your strategy to look like? And if you are taking the statin medication, it's good to know that that is overtly suppressing some key nutrients and enzymes in the body. So she needs to have
Mhm.
adequate support with some other CoQ10 and some other
Yep.
key nutrients to
Yep.
bolster that, right? So she's
Yeah.
like, I never even knew this. Like my doctor never said these things. So
Yeah.
her just knowing this information and then being able to go back to her doctor and come up with a plan for her
Mhm.
to be able to wean off of that. We don't prescribe, we do not medicate. So we do not counsel on medication. But what we do is help you understand all of the considerations so that you can go into your doctor and have a more educated conversation and come up with a game plan that's in alignment with your goals.
Yes. And that feels like you are empowered in your own health and in your own
Absolutely.
decisions. Yeah.
Mhm.
When that information is really powerful. I
Yeah.
love that. So how can people get in touch with you, Amanda? I know you've also got some really great, resources.
Absolutely.
You've got an amazing masterclass. So I will definitely pop the link to Amanda's masterclass in description here, so you can grab that, and it's awesome. And how else can they get in touch with you? Your website?
Yeah,
Where
you
you
can always go to our
find?
website. It's hinmanholistic.com. And in the website, there's a resource tab. So one of the things that I always encourage people, if people are just like, I want to just kind of see where I'm at and just kind of
Yeah.
check in. One of the first simple steps you can do is my free hormone assessment. In that, it will give you an indication for the six primary hormones that we look at: insulin, thyroid, cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. So you can gauge based on how your body is signaling to you what those hormone levels may be, where they may be performing currently.
Yeah.
And then also that mindset. Where is my mindset? What is my approach to my health? That's a great starting point. At the website, you can always apply to work with us in a variety of ways. Like I said, we have, my Alexa went off. We have a variety of different ways that people can work with us. And then of course, like the masterclass, I think is a great starting
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah, I love how easy it is to just have a conversation with you and your team about what would be next steps, and where to go from that conversation. It's very supportive. It's very loving. It's not at all trying to convince or persuade you that you have to have the thing or you have to do the thing. And that's what I adore about your whole company. It's just very empowering for women to have a place where they can land, where they can get their questions answered, where they can be supported. And when they're ready, they get to just kind of move into the next step that feels the best fit for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Likewise, same thing, what you're doing is such important work for women to feel clear and confident in how they show up in their business and make a bigger difference in the world. I love it.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, everybody, grab the link, go to hinmanholistichealth.com. I will make sure it's in the description there. Check out the resources. Go say hello to Amanda. And thank you so much for being here and sharing this valuable information, Amanda. So appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.